Heather, how we doing?
I am in the middle of a divorce after 16 years with two kids. I woke up in July and my husband and kids had left, and I was diagnosed bipolar after that. And I think the biggest issue I'm having is how to deal with the shame and regret that I have because I'm not getting the opportunity to fix what's been broken. And so how do I sit and move forward when it's been something that's been my responsibility? I know that there are some people that say that it takes two in a marriage, but when there's a mental illness involved too, there's a part of me that says, this was all my responsibility. This was all my doing. I didn't know. What do I do?
So what did you do to make him leave?
Honestly, I was arguing with my preteen daughter quite a bit.
Okay.
And in mania, I had spoken with somebody else over the phone that I had known from my childhood.
So you argued with your daughter, and forget the mania part, okay? I want to disassociate here from the bipolar stuff. I just want to talk to you directly, okay?
Absolutely.
And so take the bipolar glasses off, and I just want to hear, what are the things you did to break up a 16-year marriage, okay? So you argued with your preteen daughter.
Yes.
All right. And that makes you one, and nobody does that, by the way, so that's all on you. And then what's next did you do? I'm being sarcastic, by the way. What next? The other thing is you, on the phone, talk to somebody.
I flirted with another man, yes.
Okay, so you flirted with another man. Did you go meet him up in a hotel and hook up with him?
No, I did not. I never even FaceTimed with him.
I'm so old now. I'm not laughing at you. I realize there's all these new technological ways to cheat, and they're all like new. I'm just a loser. Okay, so you argued and you flirted. What else did you do?
I planned to have this escape mode in my head it was back in middle school. It was a group of us. We all had this 10-year plan that if none of us were happy, we'd all run away together type thing.
Sweet.
And yeah, and it started out as a joke, but it became the 5-year plan when he and I got on the phone. And so there was a lot of fantasy land involved in there I wasn't doing my wifely job. I wasn't giving him the attention. He wasn't giving me the attention. And so therefore I created it over the phone with somebody else.
Fair.
That's
okay.
the best way I can describe that.
Right. So you had a disconnected relationship and you began to outsource that connection other places. Right?
Yes, that's correct.
And so I want to put the bipolar aside for a second, okay? And the things that you've told me here, if you were manic often, that can be exhausting to live with. Is that fair?
It is exhausting to deal with and live with. I grew up with it. My mother was bipolar.
Okay. And then when it comes to the low season, give me an example of what a low period would be like for you. I wouldn't be sleeping at night, so I'd be sleeping in. I think I did my best sleeping from 9 to 11 when my girls were in school. And then, I would get up, and that was most of my low season. But I had been on medication for anxiety for 15 plus years. And what would happen is it seemed like every 6 months I would go through this cycle where I'd have, just the only emotion I could tap into was anger. When my dad died, I didn't cry. When things happened, I didn't cry. There wasn't, it was either okay or angry. I just, listen to the picture you're painting me, okay? Your dad passes away. You grew up in a house with a bipolar mom. When did your dad die? How old were you?
He died 3 years ago from cancer. Okay. It was from day to diagnosis was 31 days.
Jeez Louise. Yeah.
Yeah, it was absolutely heartbreaking.
Right.
So you grow up in a home that's a mess. It's chaos, right? And you're finding defense strategies and you are finding connection strategies wherever you can get them. You've been experiencing this low-level burn, sometimes a high, loud fire alarm burn of anxiety for 15 years. That tells me you've been in a semi-connected or unconnected marriage for 15 years. Doesn't mean you don't love this guy. Doesn't mean he's not great. He may be a great guy. That may mean that you're tough to live with, and the strategies you learned growing up plugged into his strategies that he learned growing up, and y'all just have had this anxious, connected, disconnected dance for 15 years.
Yeah.
All that to say is, I don't want you walking around with this gigantic cinder block of shame that you are at fault. And more importantly, now you've got something to point to and blame it on, which is a mental health diagnosis. I want you just to back up and own it. That it takes, as cheesy as this sounds, they're right. It takes two to tango. It does. And at some point, the disconnection got to your husband and he walked out the door. And arguing and flirting and creating other checkpoints are not... that's not why you cash in on a marriage. It's just not. Okay?
I didn't think so either, but I just there's so much embarrassment that comes with what I did because I truly did love my husband and my children. And then there comes the shame of knowing that there is a mental health diagnosis and I didn't take care of it before and I didn't know. I really, truly thought it was just an anxiety diagnosis. And I was seeing people and going to therapy. I went to outpatient since. I'm on different medication. I'm in therapy twice a week and trying to do anything and everything I can to repair everything, but he's not willing in any way, shape, or form.
If you are continuing to chase down what was, you're never going to get well. You're never going to find wholeness. Okay. And so this is going to be another loss in a line of losses for you, and it's going to hurt. And it sounds like you haven't fully put the guard down and grieved it yet. Is that fair?
I've grieved quite a bit, but
crying is different than grieving.
I think there's still a part of me that hopes that, there will be a fixable moment after 16 years and aren't I worth it? Isn't the family worth it type situation? Right.
And when you start putting external worths on your internal wholeness, man, you're going to start chasing all sorts of different behaviors, different people, different actions, trying to plug that hole up. Okay? What you're doing right now, working on yourself, you've got to do it for one reason. It's because Heather's worth being well. That's it. And a whole Heather who deals with her childhood trauma, and if you grew up in the house of someone who's truly bipolar, and I say this a lot on the show, bipolar is much, much rarer than it's diagnosed. Okay? If you grew up in the home of somebody who's truly bipolar, then you grew up in a marriage that was challenging, right? You grew up with a model of a marriage that was challenging. It wouldn't surprise me if your dad had to figure out ways to check in and plug into other things that would connect him to.
He was an addict.
Wholeness. Okay, there you go. And I just had the caller before this, addiction is a connection issue, right? And so then you get an addict and a bipolar person in a room, and then they start a dance. You absorb that, right? You grow up with trauma and you just do that dance all over again. And your husband participated in that dance for 16 years. Okay? Here's all I'm telling you. I want you to exhale and just stop running. Okay? Just put your shoulders down, and you're going to have to find somebody. If you're going to counseling twice a week, if you're seeing a therapist twice a week, that's a great place to start. But crying is different than grieving. Grieving is ownership. It is, with a period at the end of it. And then it is letting that part wash over you. And if you are bipolar, if you are being medicated, if you under the care of a mental health professional, I recommend you do it with them because they're going to walk you through it. But I want you to, when do you go see your therapist next? this week.
When I get off the phone with you.
Oh, great. Awesome. So here's what I want you to do. I want you to go and say, I am trying to fix my marriage still. And that's a noble, right thing to do. I'm proud of you for saying I'm not giving up until that court document's final. Okay. But you can't change his mind. He left. And rightly or wrongly, not rightly or wrongly. If it's because arguing preteen and flirted and you start checking other places, in my head, that's not a reason to walk out on a marriage. My guess is there's probably more to it than that. And if I had him on the phone, he'd probably have a whole other narrative. But what I'm telling you is he contributed fully to the picture that you're now staring at. Okay. I want you to go to your counselor. I want you to tell her that I am ready to grieve. I've got to just acknowledge what is happening to me, and I need some help grieving. Okay. I want you to go get David Kessler's book, Finding Meaning. And I want you to read that book. And I want you to ask your therapist to read that book. And I want them to walk you through it. And if you have a good therapist who is interested in partnering with you in your mental health journey, they will be excited to get a new read and to partner with you because you're taking ownership of your wellness. You're not outsourcing it to somebody. You're not just spending time blaming. I don't know that you're at the blame and shame part. I think you are still in the grieving part. And you've got to just sit down and exhale and own this. When it comes to bipolar, now that you've got your diagnosis, they may be able to give you some medication. They may be able to give you some strategies that you're going to have to work on now and for years. But you've got a lot of trauma healing to do here. And so I hope that your therapist is well and good and knows what they're doing. At the end of the day, I want to make sure you know that as cliche as it sounds, it takes two people to be in a relationship. And 14 years ago, your husband could have come to you and said, we are 2 years in. You are anxious all the time. I'm not able to make a safe space for you, and I don't know why, and I want us to get help. And I want to start healing now. And you grew up in the home of an addict and a bipolar mom. I want to be a part of a healing process. I want to learn some new strategies on how I can create a safe, welcoming, vulnerable home for you to be here and whole and full in. And he didn't do that. He left. He took your kids and he left. I want you to be well, and I want you to be whole. And here's the other thing. You haven't lost your kids. You got to reach out, and you got to show back up to your kids. You don't make promises that you can't keep. You got to continue to take your medication and continue to do the work that you know you need to do so that one day you're not on medication anymore. You've created some boundaries in your life. So when you do have high seasons and low seasons, you've got governors on your life. And that may mean, look, hell, I'm heading into a high season, I need to give my debit card to somebody else, or I'm heading into a low season, I'm going to fill in the blank, right? But don't make bipolar your identity. You're Heather from Austin, freaking Texas. You're a mom. You're a good woman. You grew up in a mess, and you've got trauma that you've got to work through, and it's going to take a season. But don't give up on yourself. Don't just throw up your hands and say, well, I got bipolar, that's that. No, ma'am, you're worth more than that. So, Heather, I want you to have that conversation with your therapist tonight. I'm fascinated to know what they say. I would love to have a client come in and say, I got this new book. I'm ready to get in the deep end here, and it's going to start with me grieving this loss. I want you to tell your husband, I hate that we're breaking this up. I feel like I'm still worth it. If you're going to leave, it breaks my heart. And let there be a period at the end of that sentence. Tell your daughters you're not ever going to give up on them. You love them. You're always going to be connected to them. You're always going to be with them. And then you got to put the work in every single day.